following the successful full-range test of the DF-31 land-based strategic missile last month. The Chinese rocket force has recently been trending again. On October 17, Xi Jinping inspected a certain unit of the rocket force. He inspected the equipment operation of this unit and visited the military history museum of this brigade. The scenes captured by Xinhua News Agency and the People's Liberation Army daily. Dozens of missile transport erection launch integrated vehicles of this unit are lined up in a row, presenting a magnificent sight. Judging from the pictures, the main combat equipment of this brigade is the DF-26, China's new generation of medium-range ballistic missile. Of course, due to professional issues, we won't talk about some technical things. However, the information revealed by public reports can still be interpreted. For example, it can be found from Xi Jinping's expectations for this unit that Xi Jinping requires this brigade to enhance strategic deterrence and combat capabilities. The words of the leader are definitely not spoken casually. They can only be released after repeated deliberation. Then, by checking relevant materials, it can be found that strategic deterrence refers to actions to force the opponent to submit by demonstrating strategic strength and demonstrating determination to act in order to achieve certain strategic goals. And when looking up the specific definition of strategic strength, it refers to the strength that plays a pillar role in the overall strategic situation, analyzed in the specific context of the rocket force. Then there is no doubt that it refers to the strategic nuclear force of the rocket force. Therefore, the leader's message may seem casual but actually contains profound mysteries. After thinking for a long time, I believe this should be a public declaration of dual meanings. First, strategic deterrence. There is no doubt that this refers to the DF-26 ballistic missile, which is a medium-range ballistic missile that can be equipped with nuclear warheads. Of course, this is not much of a big news. As early as the National Day military parade in 2019, when the DF-26 appeared, the introduction in the commentary pointed out that it is a nuclear and conventional, dual-capable ballistic missile. Now, it just reconfirms this point through the leader's message. So, why does the DF-26 ballistic missile choose a nuclear and conventional dual-capable configuration? This needs to be considered from its research and development goals and intended tasks. In my opinion, the research and development goal of the DF-26 is to achieve dual effects. One is to replace China's first-generation medium and long-range ballistic missile, the DF-4, as the third type of the 4 missiles in 8 years planned by Chen Shui-sen. The DF-4 strategic missile made its first flight in 1970. When deployed in eastern China, its strike range is sufficient to cover the important strategic fulcrums of the United States in the Western Pacific and the core cities of the vassal states of the United States in East Asia. When deployed in the Western region, it can strike the core cities of the European part of the Soviet Union due to the limited financial resources of the Second Artillery Force of China in the 1980s. And also because the DF-4 strategic missile does not have the ability for precision strikes. There is no need to deploy conventional warheads. Therefore, the DF-4 strategic missile has always been undertaking strategic nuclear deterrence tasks. However, as time goes by, the DF-4 strategic missile has clearly become obsolete. Whether it is its launch pad launch mode or its liquid fuel rocket engine configuration, it is seriously outdated. Therefore, to undertake the nuclear deterrence mission against the strong enemy's strategic fulcrums in East Asia, the core cities of some countries in East Asia, and the core cities of the European part of the Northern Great Power, this requires a replacement product for the DF-4 strategic missile. And now it seems that the new generation of solid-fuel medium and long-range ballistic missiles, represented by the DF-26, is such a replacement product. This is an important factor why the DF-26 first has nuclear strike capabilities. For example, Guam is located at the core of the U.S. military's layout in the Western Pacific and is within the range of the DF-26 to develop new tactical strike capabilities. After all, for the important strategic support points of the strong enemy in the Western Pacific or the strikes on the core cities of its vassal states, it is not limited to implementing strategic nuclear attacks. There are still a large number of tactical-level targets that need to be precisely struck. As China's anti-access or area denial combat system is gradually improved, the suppression demand for such targets becomes more and more urgent since China's aircraft carrier force is relatively weak. It is obviously unrealistic for tactical aircraft to cross a distance of several thousand kilometers to strike these targets. And using strike means such as subsonic cruise missiles to implement strikes on these tactical targets has obviously weak strike effectiveness and poor penetration ability. Therefore, this requires China to develop new strike means represented by medium-range ballistic missiles and rely on medium-range ballistic missiles with precision strike capabilities to strike these tactical level targets thousands of kilometers away. So, the DF-26 ballistic missile is a nuclear and conventional dual-capable missile, proposed under such circumstances. It can not only replace the original DF-4 missile and undertake medium-range strategic deterrence task B, but also be used as a long-range precision strike means under the anti-access or area denial combat system. This is the meaning of the DF-26 missile being nuclear and conventional, dual-capable, having multiple development purposes and undertaking multiple tasks. Secondly, Xi Jinping mentioned the combat capability in actual combat of the DF-26 brigade, which is even more interesting. As we said earlier, the DF-26 is a nuclear and conventional dual-capable ballistic missile. Then, this combat capability in actual combat naturally also has a dual meaning. Is it nuclear actual combat or conventional actual combat? If it is nuclear actual combat, as we all know, China's nuclear strategy is actually a deterrence-oriented strategy. China's external declaration is also that nuclear war cannot be fought and cannot be won. The value of nuclear weapons lies in strategic deterrence capabilities on the launch pad rather than being launched. In fact, from the perspective of nuclear deterrence, if nuclear weapons are launched, it means that your strategic deterrence has basically ended in failure. However, now President Xi Jinping has mentioned the combat capabilities of this type of ballistic missile. Does it mean that China's nuclear strategy needs to be adjusted accordingly? From the original nuclear deterrence strategy to a nuclear combat strategy under certain situations. Is this strategy related to the theater-level nuclear exchange envisioned by the Soviet Union? Is it related to the United States deploying the W-76 to tactical nuclear weapon on the Ohio-class ballistic missile nuclear submarine and matching the F-35 fighter with the B-61 Mod 12 tactical nuclear weapon? This is indeed a matter worthy of study after all. Compared to intercontinental strategic missiles, medium-range strategic missiles have shorter response times, faster strike speeds, and similar strike consequences to the use of W-76 and B-61 Mod 12 by the U.S. military. They can be used as a means of balanced response. Of course, if this actual combat refers to actual combat at the strategic level, we still have to say that this is really terrifying and is to some extent a strategic deterrence to the United States. If it is actual combat in a conventional state, then it is better. It does not exceed what we said earlier, using the DF-26 as a new conventional combat force to implement precision strikes on tactical targets in the second island chain. Then, in the case where the DF-26 ballistic missile has a nuclear and conventional dual-capable configuration, will the preemptive use of the DF-26 lead to misjudgment by a strong enemy and even the implementation of an air nuclear counterattack? I think this situation will not occur. China's nuclear strategy is still clear and reliable. It always adheres to the principle of no first use of nuclear weapons. And the United States has not given up the principle of first use of nuclear weapons so far. As long as the strong enemy does not first enter into tactical nuclear exchanges, then the DF-26 launched by China will inevitably be a conventional warhead. At least from my perspective. This can be confirmed, however, in addition to confirmation. This strategic declaration also requires confirmation from a strong enemy. In a sense, the lower the degree of tension in the nuclear confrontation between China and a strong enemy in East Asia, the lower the probability that China will enter theater-level nuclear exchanges in the first round of attacks. Suppose the United States chooses to exacerbate the tense situation in East Asia, such as deploying the nuclear warhead-equipped LRHW in East Asia, or frequently appearing in East Asia with the Ohio-class strategic missile nuclear submarine, carrying the W-76 nuclear warhead. Then, even if China self-declares and China's nuclear strategy principle is the principle of no first use of nuclear weapons, the United States may not necessarily believe it after all. I have placed nuclear weapons at your doorstep. If necessary, I can disarm you or even your nuclear weapons at any time. Now you tell me that you still adhere to the principle of no first use of nuclear weapons. If you don't use nuclear weapons first, I won't use nuclear weapons. Let alone whether we believe it or not. China must first solve the problem of whether the United States believes it or not. And the problem of whether the United States believes it or not is caused by itself. So this is a very complex and rather convoluted game theory problem, which is quite interesting how to view this statement. In fact, in my opinion, China's statement this time is first of all a strategic deterrence. Behind strategic deterrence is combat capability in actual combat. This in itself is a kind of strategically ambiguous declaration. To put it bluntly, it is for Americans to guess whether China's intention is nuclear actual combat or conventional actual combat. If it is conventional actual combat, then everything is fine. The two sides can conduct confrontation according to the existing anti-access or regional denial conventional combat system. But if it is nuclear actual combat, the trouble will be great. Is China ready for a potential theater nuclear war with the United States? Is it warning against the U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy? Is it warning against the U.S. intention to deploy intermediate-range missiles in the Philippines, Palau and Japan? And so on. These are all questions. Since there are all questions, the decision-making ball is kicked to the United States. Does it take the risk of escalating confrontation with China and implement the deployment of IRBM in close proximity in East Asia? Of course. A powerful enemy can also ignore this risk. But I still say that in game theory, can you dare to say that the strategic deterrence issued by China must be conventional combat, rather than nuclear combat? In case of a wrong guess and a nuclear war occurs, who will bear the consequences? During a visit to the DF-26 brigade, many people are staring at the equipment and looking around. But what I see is that China takes this opportunity to issue a strategic deterrence to the United States and the resulting series of strategic games. This is much more interesting than simply discussing equipment.